lifetime Bay Area resident, few years in Los Angeles that we'll talk about a little bit of that today.
Okay, and that we forgive you for.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I never unpacked my boxes.
That yeah, absolutely.
4 years I did there, and all my boxes were still packed because I knew I was going to come back here.
That was Peter Hartlaub, the San Francisco Chronicle's pop culture critic. But to think of Peter only in that way is to sell him so short. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco. Peter's podcast will actually be a three-parter. In today's episode, part 1, Peter will begin to tell the story of his experiences with the San Francisco Medical Examiner's Office back in 1999. Here's Peter.
It's going to start in LA.
Okay.
I was in the worst job of my career, far worse than anything I've had before and since. I had gone down to LA because there was a job available when OJ happened. I was a sports reporter and wanted to get into something different. And OJ caused this big upheaval in a wire service down in Los Angeles, and they needed someone quick. And with no experience, I went and became a court reporter covering mostly celebrity stuff for a little wire service down there. Okay. Went from there to the Los Angeles Daily News, where I just hated my job. And I felt like I was doing such a poor job at it that I was going to lose my job. And I was very scared. It was a tough time to be a journalist. And I wanted to get back up to the Bay Area. So the Examiner was hiring.
A paper I used to work for.
Yes.
By the way. I think we all have at some point.
We all have. We all do our tour. Yeah. This is 1999 when it was still the Hearst-owned Examiner.
Yep.
And there were a lot of rumors about the Examiner folding because it was the afternoon paper. It was clear that the Examiner and Chronicle were not going to both survive.
Right.
And a lot of people in the Examiner were leaving. So they were hiring a bunch of young writers, a lot of them inexperienced, because they needed to get the stories written, and everybody was leaving, and your prospects weren't that good. Right. Getting hired, even in the interview process, everybody was telling me, we're a union shop, we are probably going to either close or the Chronicle's going to buy us,
right,
and we'll either all lose our jobs or we'll be kept by seniority, and you will have been here 2 months.
Right.
But I took the job anyway because I wanted to get up in San Francisco. And my family was here.
Right.
My grandfather had just died, and I had gotten to come up one day to say goodbye to him. It was in my head that I needed to get back here.
Where exactly were you from originally, or is it?
I grew up in Burlingame.
Okay.
So Samtrans was my bus of choice, and I spent a lot of time in San Francisco.
Sure.
So I took the job. I was a courtroom reporter up here, but a lot of us were doing a lot of general assignment type stuff. I covered cops too. And I had it in my head that I was going to be a short timer if I didn't do something to impress the leadership here quick.
Right.
I wanted them to, there were little loopholes. They could make me a columnist, or they could make me an investigative reporter, and that would save me from the guillotine that was going to hit my head, because, it was pretty much accepted that, something was going to happen, and there was very few scenarios that I keep my job.
Right.
So I was pitching big stories when I came in, and the one that really landed, it was about 2 months after I got there in 1999, was I convinced the medical examiner's office in San Francisco, which had gotten some bad PR, to let me do ride-alongs with them.
Okay.
And I convinced my editors to give me a significant amount of time to write this story, and then I did probably 70-80% of it on my own time.
What was the bad PR that the medical examiner's office got? Sorry, that
I'm laughing.
Remember.
It wasn't something, like they switched bodies or anything.
Right.
I think it was more of a fiscal issue.
Okay.
Boyd Stevens was the medical examiner at the time. He's a legend, but had been working, as I found out, basically with a shoestring. I mean, I went in there, and this is 99, so it's not as shocking, but they had all their records backed up on an Apple IIe with floppy disks.
Ooh,
so,
okay.
I mean, it was like they were...
So doing autopsies on the cheap?
Yeah. I mean, they had 12 people working there, and,
Wow.
and you know, there are thousands of cops and firefighters,
Sure.
and they have a big job. So it
Yeah.
was... So I think they were thinking... I didn't expect them to let me do it, but I think they were thinking, you know, we want people to see we're doing more with less. And even if this is a hit piece, it may come out good for us.
Right.
And I hit it off with the guy who was doing their PR and their communications for them. And they opened the gates for me. I mean, they said, we will let you do a ride along. And then as I spent more time, they let me do more and more. Pretty soon, a couple of medical examiners who I'm following around are like, you know, they've got my pager number.
Right.
Pagers. This is 99.
Yes. Did you guys do the leet speak or whatever?
Yeah, 911.
Yeah.
And they were paging me with
Wow.
stuff like when they're out on a case, like, come out here. So I will say, you know, I thought this story would be, you know, I'd see some things. Maybe I'm down in the medical examiner's office watching them do autopsies. I didn't really know what they did. I mean, it was like I watched Quincy, you know, so I thought, well, they're probably going to be, you know, investigating one case for 3 weeks, and maybe I'll see a dead body.
Right.
And it was not that. I mean, it was the medical examiner equivalent of triage. They were doing many, many cases in a day, and having to notify next of kin. As I discovered and I wrote in my piece, I mean, it wasn't just scraping dead bodies off the ground, which is what I thought it was. It was, you're a priest. Right. You are a, you know, you're a counselor. So you're an investigator.
Who lets the family know.
You let the family know, and you have to find the family. I mean, they kind of did everything. It was an incredible job, and I hooked up with these two guys who I ended up, they were the ones I started following around. One of them, Graham Cowley, from Ireland, had been done some kind of autopsy technician work in his hometown, and he was seeing too many of people he knew coming through town, so he moved out here to become a medical examiner. I describe him. I describe him like he looked like an Eric Clapton roadie. You know, grizzled beard, thick Irish accent, and really colorful, really personal. He was a sensitive soul, and is a sensitive soul. I don't know that he's gone. And then Bill Tolliver, who was I think a longtime San Franciscan. He had worked in a funeral home and then taken this job. I think the benefits were better and the pay was better.
And he was okay seeing his friends and relatives versus the other guy.
Jazz drummer, really cool guy, and Bill and Graham were partners, and I started going out with them on cases. I am a squeamish soul. I am not someone who, you know, likes to like my friend Beth Spotswood, who wants to read every serial killer book and go to films. You know, when I reviewed Hostel for the Chronicle, I was closing my eyes through half of it. Right. I knew going into this that it was going to be hard for me. I was also feeling a little desperate, like I had to push my comfort zone so that I could continue to be employed as a journalist in San Francisco, which is what I wanted to be. You know,
so a few different types of challenges. Into doing this story that was yours, right? You pitched this.
I pitched it.
It was all yours.
You know, asked for it. I was getting everything I asked for on both sides, and then I started going out with them. And
out with them means you typically called to crime scenes.
Started off with, I'd come on their shift and show up, and there's 2 seats in the van, so I would sit on a box that was actually the box that was filled with the body bags. And I'd sit on the body bag box, you know, back with the corpse if I was going with 2 of them. And then they were very cool about offering me the front seat, but I didn't take it every time. And I started going on calls with them, and it started, you know, I got tours and I kind of got their confidence, and then they let me go out on essentially ride-alongs where I'm there when they get the call, they go out, they deal with the cops, and it was a lot. I mean, as you can imagine, San Francisco, the most common scene that you're going to see is like an SRO, a heroin addict. I think the first one I went out on was 5th or 6th floor of an SRO. It was high up. They were grumbling because they knew they'd have to carry the body down and the elevator wouldn't be working. I think it was on 6th Street, not too far from Toulon. And show up.
At least there was an elevator, I'm going to say. I don't know.
Yeah, no
Stairs
elevator.
There was no elevator.
There was no elevator.
Oh, okay.
No, and they were bummed there. I mean, that was their reaction.
So corners must have been interesting.
The corners were interesting.
Corners for coroners.
I remember him telling me that that there were times when they'd go into someone who was like a hoarder or who had a lot, and they would be bumping their heads on the ceiling, trying to drag a body out of a house.
Yikes.
And it was one of the first shocking things is that I just assumed they either were in a hazmat suit or they were like putting Vicks VapoRub under their nose and having all these. No, a lot of Purell and gloves, and that was it. I mean, and they were dressed in these. They had these. They looked like a Pulp Fiction Reservoir Dogs. Like, they had the jacket, the black tie, white shirt, and these guys would come in and do this work with gloves. I mean, that was it. I did that. The first one's a heroin addict. I remember his body was like locked in rigor mortis with a needle in his arm with the plunger depressed.
God.
And they're going around like inventorying what was in his place, and it was like a 2-liter bottle of Sprite and some cookies, and I remember them saying, looks like he was going to have a little party, and it wasn't like a joke. It was like there's just an observation,
matter of fact.
And I remember there was a Peter Rabbit. There was nothing on the walls except he had his bedding there and this food he was going to have, the heroin, and then this Peter Rabbit sign hanging from one nail with yarn, and it said on it, I forget the full quote, but it was, "Don't get into mischief. Be careful and don't get into mischief." I was just like, oh my God, this assignment's going to be ripe with metaphors.
Right.
So that's what we did. I mean, we did that for a few weeks, and it was hard. I didn't do many early on. I was hesitant.
Check back on Thursday to see where that hesitation took Peter next. That's it for this episode of Storied San Francisco. Our Facebook page is now up. It's Storied San Francisco. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at StoriedSF. And if you want to email me, it's storiedsf@gmail.com. The website is storiedsf.com. Music is by Joe Bigale. Photographs on the website are by Michelle Kilfeather. Starting tomorrow, November 1st, Michelle's got a great show up over at Burn Norton's Boozeland called Walking to Boozeland. Go check it out, and don't forget to tip your bartenders. If you're listening on iTunes, please rate and review Storied San Francisco. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you on Thursday for part 2.